I'm Detective James, and this is the cases the news forgot.
I have spent 38 years on the force, peering into the eyes of the most depraved monsters this city has to offer. My name is Detective Silas, and in my line of work, I thought I had seen every shade of human darkness, but I was wrong. I learned the hard way that the most lethal lies aren't told in cold interrogation rooms under buzzing fluorescent lights. They are whispered in the hallways of your own home by the very people you would give your life to protect. Before I tell you about the digital void I found in my own security system and the bruise hidden beneath a wool sleeve, I have to ask, have you ever felt the foundation of your life splinter while you were standing right on top of it? Drop a comment and let me know which city you're watching from. I'm Silas, and I'm realizing that 30 years of police work couldn't prepare me for the crime scene my living room had become. If you believe that justice should start at home, hit that subscribe button. You need to hear what my wife told me in the dead of night. It was a Tuesday. I had just finished a grueling double shift, the weight of the city's filth still clinging to my jacket. I opened my front door expecting the sanctuary of my home, but what I heard instead was a sound that will haunt me until my dying day. It wasn't a scream, it was a broken, choked moan, the kind of sound a person makes when they're trying not to cry out while their soul is being split in two. My wife Martha was huddled on the edge of the sofa, clutching herself so tightly her knuckles were white. Her face was ashen, her eyes fixed on a ghost I couldn't see. When she saw me, her legs gave out. She produced a frantic, silent plea, her lips moving but her voice locked away by sheer trauma. In that instant, every detective instinct I owned screamed at me. I've survived shootouts, crushing debts, and the loss of my parents, but I had never seen my Martha like this. As I knelt before her, trying to coax a single word from her frozen lips, my daughter, Alina, appeared from the hallway. She was moving too fast, her hair a bird's nest, gripping her phone like a weapon. "Dad, I just got here," she said, her voice frantic but clean, too clean. I've listened to thousands of liars, and Alina sounded like she was reading from a script she'd rehearsed in the driveway. She claimed she'd found her mother collapsed in the kitchen during a casual visit, but she wouldn't meet my gaze. In my line of work, that's the first red flag. It's the telltale sign of someone hiding a body. I watched Alina as she played the part of the concerned daughter, making tea no one wanted and fussing over pillows. Her voice was a shrill distraction, a wall of noise meant to keep me from looking too closely, but I was looking. I saw the dark, faint bruise on Martha's wrist hidden under her sweater. When I asked Alina if she touched her, she didn't flinch, she performed. "How could you say that, Dad?" I'd never hurt her. I carried Martha to bed, her body feeling like laid in my arms. I stayed until the medicine finally pulled her into a fitful sleep. Then I moved. I didn't go to the kitchen. I went to the utility room where the security monitors live. My hands shook as I pulled up the logs. Noon was peaceful. The morning was clear, but then a 38-minute void. A digital black hole where the clock didn't move and the sensors didn't trigger. Someone had manually bypassed the system. When the footage finally snapped back to life, I saw Martha on the kitchen floor, curled in a ball, clutching her arm. Seconds later, Alina walked into the frame, calmly checking her reflection in the microwave door and fixing her hair before heading to the living room to start her act. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't a heart attack. It was the agony of betrayal. I walked back out and lied to my own daughter, telling her to go home, hiding the detective behind the father's mask. I sat by Martha's bed until 3 a.m., watching the shadows crawl. When her eyes finally snapped open, they were clear and terrifying. She leaned in, the scent of her lavender soap mixing with the smell of her medicine, and whispered 5 words that changed my life forever. "Do not trust her, Silas. I'm Detective Silas, and I'm about to find out that the daughter I raised is a stranger who's been planning a nightmare right under my nose." I sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress sagging under the weight of my 38 years of marriage and 30 years of badges. My name is Silas. I've interrogated killers who showed more remorse than the woman currently pacing in my kitchen. When Martha's lips finally moved in the dark, her voice was a brittle shard of glass. "She forced me," she whispered. "She pushed me down," she screamed because I wouldn't sign. "Sign what, Martha?" I asked, the blood in my veins turning to liquid nitrogen. But before she could answer, a soft, melodic voice drifted from the hallway. "Dad, is everything okay in there?" Martha went instantly mute, her face snapping back into that mask of pure, unadulterated terror. I squeezed her hand, a silent promise, and called back, "Yes, Alina, everything is fine, go back to sleep." I heard her footsteps retreat, but the peace was a lie. I lay there in the dark, realizing that the missing 38 minutes on my security feed wasn't just an assault. It was the opening salvo of a war. Alina wasn't looking for a place to stay after her divorce. She was looking for a way to strip mine our lives. Before I tell you about the bank document that was actually a death sentence for our independence, I have to ask, Have you ever realized that the person you raised to be strong turned that strength into something predatory? Drop a comment with your city. I'm Sila's, and I'm finding out that sometimes the wolf doesn't wear a disguise. She just wears your last name. If you believe a father's duty to protect never expires, hit that subscribe button. You need to see the admin account I found hidden in my own house. At dawn, the house smelled of stale coffee and betrayal. I watched the sun hit the ugly purple bruise on Martha's wrist. She told me she felt ashamed. That word nearly cracked my ribs. I spent the morning playing the part, the aging, oblivious father, while my mind drifted back to the little girl who used to sit on my lap. I thought I'd raised a woman of character. Instead, I'd let a predator into the sheepfold. When Alina's car pulled in at 10 a.m. sharp, she walked in with a rehearsed smile. "Dad, how's Mom?" "You tell me," I said, my voice as cold as a morgue slab. "You were the one holding her when the cameras went dark." Her smile didn't just fade. It vanished. The mask didn't slip, it shattered. She tried to tell me Martha was just clumsy, that she was banging into furniture because she was old. But I've lived with that woman for nearly 4 decades, and she's never had a mark like that. "I want to talk about the papers you had her sign," I pressed. Alina's eyes stayed wide, a classic defensive tell. She tried to laugh it off, calling it a standard bank document. But then she snapped. "Because she's weak," she hissed, the venom finally leaking out. "Someone has to take charge before everything falls apart." "Take charge," I whispered, "or take ownership." She left with a disturbing, surgical silence, but the moment the door closed, Martha collapsed. The truth spilled out like a wound that wouldn't clot. Alina had been gaslighting her for months, telling her I was becoming senile, threatening to put her in an asylum if she didn't sign over the power of attorney. Yesterday, when Martha refused, Alina shoved her against the table and crushed her wrist until she forced the pen into her hand. She covered Martha's mouth so I wouldn't hear the screams when I walked through the door. I waited until Martha slept, then I went back to the security room. I wasn't a father anymore, I was a lead investigator building a folder. I searched the digital logs and found it, a hidden user account created weeks ago under a fake name. Adminto, my daughter hadn't just bypassed the cameras. She'd been remote monitoring our lives, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But she forgot one thing: I'm Detective Silas, and I don't just watch, I catch. I've built thousands of cases on digital evidence, but I never expected to find the most important lead of my career in a dusty corner of my own back hallway. My name is Detective Silas, and for 30 years I've told rookies that criminals always overlook one small detail. My daughter, Alina, was no different. She had professionally scrubbed the main security hub, but she didn't know about the off-brand, low-res camera I'd tucked away years ago to watch the kitchen door. It wasn't part of the network she'd hacked, it was a silent witness waiting in the dark. Before I tell you about the grainiest, most heartbreaking 38 minutes of footage I've ever watched, I have to ask: at what point does a daughter stop being your child and start being a suspect? Drop a comment with your city. I'm Silas, and I'm finding out that the blue light of a monitor can show you a truth that turns your world to ash. If you believe that no one is above the law, especially family, hit that subscribe button. You need to see what happened when we stepped into that bank. I sat on the floor of my utility room, sweat slicking my palms, and watched the playback. The quality was poor, but the crime was crystal clear. I watched Martha washing a plate. I watched Alina enter, her body language radiating a cold, predatory intent. I watched my wife plead, her hands up in defense, before Alina grabbed her. I watched the shove. I saw Martha hit the edge of the oak table and slide to the floor like a broken doll. I had to cover my mouth to keep from roaring in agony as I watched my own daughter's fingers grind into the fragile skin of the woman I've loved for my entire adult life. I watched her force that signature, and then, this was the part that chilled me to the bone, I saw Alina wipe her eyes and put on the performance of a grieving, worried daughter just seconds before I walked through the door. I didn't cry for the money or the house. I cried for the daughter I thought I'd raised. She was dead to me now. When she came back that evening, whistling a tune and carrying fast food, I watched her through the eyes of a lead investigator. She was too sure of herself. She announced that we were going to the bank the next morning to solve the issue once and for all. That night I didn't sleep. I copied that footage onto 3 separate drives. I hid one in my old police jacket, one under the mattress, and I buried the third in a jar deep in the garden. If anything accidental happened to me, the truth would survive. I realized then that the house deeds and bank titles were already missing from my desk. She'd moved them. She'd been planning this takeover since the moment she moved back in. The drive to the bank was a silent duel. I knew the truth. She didn't know I knew. We were ushered into a private office and the clerk laid out the papers. Total power of attorney, asset administration, a complete legal takeover. Alina smiled that cold, predatory smile, but I stepped in. I want to review every single sheet slowly, I said. When I reached the final page, I looked up and met her eyes. We aren't signing a single word of this. Alina stood up so fast her chair screeched. You can't do this. Everything depends on this signature. Everything depends on the truth, I answered. And I know everything, Alina. I know about the kitchen. I know about the bruises. She let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh, looking at the bank manager. The truth about what, Dad? What kind of insane lie is that? She was playing the confused old man card, trying to bury me one last time. But then the unthinkable happened. Martha, the woman who had been a ghost of herself for months, stood up. She didn't tremble. She didn't look away. I have spent 30 years taking statements from the most hardened criminals in the city, but nothing was as powerful as the moment my Martha found her voice. My name is Detective Silas, and in that sterile bank office, I watched the woman I love reclaim her life. She looked our daughter Alina dead in the eye and said, "Do not lie anymore. You pushed me. You forced me to sign, and I will never do it again." Before I tell you about the midnight break-in and the moment Alina threatened to destroy my reputation with a single phone call, I have to ask, when does a parent's duty to protect their child end and their duty to do justice begin? Drop a comment with your city. I'm Silas, and I'm finding out that some crimes can't be settled with an apology. They require a badge. If you believe that truth is the only thing that can't be deleted, hit that subscribe button. You need to see how I baited the trap. In the bank, Alina turned white as a sheet. She tried the confused card, but Martha wasn't playing. "I was confused when I thought you loved us," she shouted. "Now I know you just wanted to bury us." When the clerk reached for the phone to report the elder abuse, Alina's mask didn't just slip, it fell off entirely. I placed the memory drive on the desk. "You deleted the main logs, Alina," I said, "but you forgot the backup in the hallway." Security escorted us out, but in the parking lot, Alina grabbed my arm, her nails drawing blood. "Dad, please, you'll destroy me." I looked at her with a grief so deep it felt like an ocean. "You destroyed yourself," I told her. "I'm just saving your mother." But the nightmare didn't stop in that parking lot. That night, the phone hissed with a voice I didn't recognize. Alina threatened to flip the script, to tell the police I was the abusive one, that I was senile and had faked the footage. "Do it," I replied. "The truth doesn't break under the weight of a lie." Later that night, I watched from the window as her silhouette prowled the tool shed, frantically searching for the drives I'd already hidden. I recorded every second of it on my phone. The next day, I didn't just call a lawyer, I called my old precinct. I spoke to my brother and a trusted attorney. We watched the footage together, and for the first time, I looked at Alina not as my little girl, but as a suspect in an interrogation room. The lawyer was blunt. "This is a criminal case now." But to make it ironclad, we needed her to strike one more time. We needed her to believe she was winning. I called her that afternoon, making my voice sound thin, defeated, and ready to break. "Daughter," I said, "I'm tired. I don't have the strength to fight you anymore. Let's talk." I was setting a hook, and I knew my daughter. I knew her greed would make her bite. I sat at the kitchen table, the silence of the house feeling heavier than any lead-lined room at the precinct. My name is Detective Silas, and for 30 years, I've used a suspect's own arrogance to build a cage for them. I called Alina and made my voice sound brittle, like an old man who had finally run out of fight. When she arrived at 4 p.m., she walked with the stride of a conqueror. She didn't know she was walking into a house wired for a confession. Before I tell you about the moment my daughter admitted she was willing to go as far as necessary, and the sound of the handcuffs clicking shut in my own living room, I have to ask, is there any betrayal worse than one that carries your own DNA? Drop a comment with your city. I'm Silas, and I'm finding out that sometimes the only way to save your family is to let the law dismantle it. If you believe that no one is too big to fall, hit that subscribe button. You need to see the look on her face when the back door burst open. Alina sat across from me, her fake smile dripping with condescension. She demanded I destroy the recording. She promised me a life without worries, which I knew meant a life without rights. When I told her I could take her to prison, she laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You don't have the courage, Dad. You and Mom are weak. Someone had to take control." "Control isn't taken with violence, Alina," I said, my voice steady. She leaned in, her eyes hardening into flint. "The weak always lose." I did what I had to do, and I'd go as far as necessary to finish it. That was it. No more doubts, no more fatherly hope. I stood up and told her the conversation was over. As she sneered, asking if I was going to report her, I pulled the memory drive from my jacket. "You just reported yourself, Alina. Every word, every threat, every admission. It's all here." The arrogance didn't just fade, it decomposed. She lunged for me, but she's never lived a life where people lunged back. Before she could touch the door, the back door burst open. 2 officers I'd worked with for decades crossed the threshold. Alina's scream was the sound of a cornered predator. As they pinned her arms and read her rights for domestic violence, coercion, and forgery, she looked at me and shrieked, "I'm your daughter. "You stopped being my daughter," I told her, "the moment you laid a hand on your mother." The sirens faded, leaving Martha and me in a silence that made my ears ache. Martha didn't just cry, she let out a soul-cleansing wail, the sound of a woman returning from the dead. We didn't sleep. By dawn, the lawyer revealed the fraud was deeper than we imagined. Alina had been systematically draining our retirement accounts for months. 2 days later, at the preliminary hearing, I watched the judge and the bailiffs look away as the kitchen recording played on a giant screen. Seeing your life's shame broadcasted for strangers is a pain I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Alina sat there in a jumpsuit, looking small and broken, but the judge's gavel sounded like a funeral bell. We had won our house back, but we had lost our child. As we walked out of that courthouse, Martha gripped my hand, and I realized that while the war was won, the healing would take longer than the 38 years we'd spent building this life. Leaving that courthouse, Martha stopped on the sidewalk and took a deep, shaky breath of the cold winter air. For the first time in over a year, I saw a glimmer of the vibrant woman I'd married. "I can finally breathe, Silas," she said. I held her tight, but as a detective, I knew the truth. We had saved our home, but we had lost our child. We were learning to live in the wreckage, discovering that sometimes the ultimate act of love is letting justice take the person you tried so hard to protect. Before I tell you about the final play, Alina tried to pull from behind bars in the heartbeat of a victory that felt like a funeral. I have to ask, how do you mourn someone who is still alive but has become a monster? Drop a comment with your city. I'm Silas, and I'm finding out that trauma is a tenant that doesn't just move out because you've served an eviction notice. If you believe the truth doesn't need to shout to be heard, hit that subscribe button. You need to see how this ends. The following weeks were a blur of unwanted visitors and scavengers looking for gossip. I dismissed them with cold, professional politeness. I wasn't going to let our tragedy become a spectator sport. But the investigation was deepening. My lawyer revealed that Alina hadn't just snapped. She had a digital trail of forged loan applications and secret meetings with a corrupt bank manager. This was a calculated execution, months in the making. Martha's heart broke all over again. It's one thing to process a moment of violence. It's another to realize your child was smiling across the dinner table while methodically dismantling your life. "I still see her as a little girl with a red ribbon in her hair," Martha sobbed one night. "And then I wake up, look at my bruised wrist, and I can't bridge the distance between those two versions of her." Then, the phone rang from the county jail. Alina's voice was hollow. "I never wanted to kill her, Dad, but you broke her, Alina," I replied, my voice like iron. "You broke her spirit and her safety. Those wounds don't always heal." When the day for the formal declaration arrived, Martha found a strength I hadn't seen in decades. She stood before the judge and detailed every blow, every hissed threat, every forced signature. She reclaimed her dignity. The judge assured us her betrayal would be met with the full weight of the law, but Alina had one last move. A thick envelope arrived with a handwritten note from her public defender. She wasn't just pleading not guilty, she was going on the offensive. She alleged that Martha was psychologically altered and that I had manipulated her into a false accusation to settle old grudges. "She still wants to destroy us," Martha whispered, her face turning ghostly gray, even from a cell. "Lies only work in the dark, Martha," I said, holding her as her heart raced against mine. Now the truth is speaking. The trial was a waking nightmare. The kitchen recording was played on a loop, our family's destruction projected on a courtroom wall. Alina sat at the defense table, giving me a look of cold reproach, as if I were the betrayer. But I'd stared down killers before. My own daughter could no longer make me flinch. The judge ordered prolonged detention. She could no longer take anything from us. That night, Martha took my hand. "If I were born again," she told me, "I'd do almost everything differently, except choosing you." Our family tree was splintered, but our bond was the only victory we had left. The day of the final sentencing dawned under a gray, heavy sky. Martha moved slowly, like she was preparing for a funeral. As we left the house, she looked back at the hallway one last time, fearing she wouldn't recognize herself when we returned. The day of the final sentencing dawned under a sky so heavy it felt as if the clouds were pressing down on my very soul. My name is Detective Silas, and as I walked into that courtroom, the pounding in my chest was so loud I feared it would drown out the judge. Alina was already there, stripped of her designer clothes and her arrogance. She looked small, pale, and fragile, another mask I'd learned to recognize. I kept my eyes forward, but I felt Martha shudder beside me. I gripped her shoulder. "We weren't here as victims today. We were here as the architects of our own survival. Before I tell you about the final verdict that shattered our family tree, and the one thing Martha said to me in our garden that made 30 years of police work worth it, I have to ask. Is it possible to truly forgive someone who shares your blood but tried to steal your soul? Drop a comment with your city. I'm Silas, and I'm finding out that a happy ending isn't always possible, but a necessary one is. If you believe that truth is the only path to freedom, hit that subscribe button. You need to see how we closed this door. The judge's voice hit the room like a hammer, reading the counts. Domestic violence, coercion, forgery, and attempted asset stripping. When Alina was given the floor, she spoke in a thin, practiced whisper about stress and the burden of our aging. I listened to her lies and felt nothing but a tired, hollow ache. But when it was Martha's turn, the room went silent. She walked to the stand, and for a moment I was terrified she'd break. Instead, she raised her head and spoke with a clarity that cut through the legal jargon like a blade. She didn't decorate the truth. She told the story of the first push, the last threat, and the horror of being a prisoner in her own kitchen. I followed her, testifying about the digital footprints and the sight of my daughter's fingers bruising the woman I loved. The judge called for a recess. The silence was brutal. Martha squeezed a small rosary until her knuckles were white. When the court returned, we stood, guilty, guilty on all counts. The sentence included effective prison time and the immediate annulment of every document Alina had forged. Alina didn't scream this time. She let out a deep, hollow sob, the sound of defeat. As they led her away, she looked at me one last time with a mute, terrible question. The heavy door closed with a thud that echoed in my bones. Outside, Martha took a long breath of the city air. "Is it over?" she whispered. "Yes," I said, "it's over." The days that followed were strange. We eventually opened Alina's bedroom door together. It was a shrine to someone who no longer belonged to us, the bed made, the clothes in the closet, the trinkets on the shelf. Martha sat on the edge of the bed and wept for the daughter we thought we had raised. There is no manual for how to close your heart to your own child, but slowly we rebuilt. Martha started therapy. She stopped waking up screaming. I watched from the window as she returned to her garden, watering the roses without looking over her shoulder. One afternoon, sitting on the porch, she looked at me and said, "Silas, if you hadn't walked through that door when you did, I don't think I'd be here today. And if you hadn't whispered the truth to me," I replied, "I would still be blind." We lost a daughter. We lost the illusion of the perfect family, but we didn't lose our dignity or our lives. We learned that true love isn't a blank check. It doesn't give someone the right to destroy you. Sometimes to save the person you love, you have to protect them from the very person who shares their blood. It's been months since that gavel fell. The house smells like fresh coffee and peace again. Martha still has days where she stares out the window with glazed eyes, and I don't try to fix it with hollow words. I just take her hand. We are survived by our truth. If my story reached you today, remember this. It is never too late to say enough. It is never too late to protect the people who truly matter. I'm Detective Silas, and this was the hardest case I ever closed. If this journey touched your heart, please subscribe and join our community. Your support gives us the strength to share these raw stories. Tell me what you would have done in my place and let me know which city you're watching from. I read every single message. Thank you for listening to an old man's truth. And most importantly, thank you for not looking the other way.